Rael. Listen to me. You have to fight it. The sync vibrated. For a second, the false world cracked. A sliver of real light poured through, then static swallowed it again. Elsewhere, Kaeli stumbled backward, breathing hard. The uplink spark burned against her palms. Isrin stood beside her, sweat dripping from her brow. That's it. You almost reached him. Kaeli opened her eyes. He's locked in deep. She's using guilt loops. Isrin shook her head. That won't hold forever. But we have to go now. Before the relay pulse comes back. Go where? Isrin pulled a worn data shard from her sleeve, the old hybrid vault. West Channel. There's a name stored there. Someone who helped build this network. Someone who knew your father. Kaeli blinked. My father? Isrin nodded slowly. You weren't the first Gateborn. But you might be the last. Above them, the grid lights glitched, a new voice echoed across the speaker net, distorted. Male, but not a stranger, Rael. If you're hearing this. I'm still alive. But not for long. Kaeli looked up, Isrin's eyes widened, that voice. Kaeli whispered, it's him again. The signal repeated once, then ended, encrypted with an old war cipher. Only one man used that sequence, Commander Tren, Rael's old mentor. Dead for over 5 years, back in the memory sink, Rael stirred, the loop fractured, just for a moment, the light in his eyes returned. And he remembered who he was. The memory crumbled, not all at once, just in slivers, cracks spread through the scene like frost across a windowpane. The colors bled. The sound warped. My mother's voice slowed into a wet, mechanical drawl. Jaren's laughter reversed itself, shrank into silence. I was waking up, but the system was fighting back. The sync didn't let go easy. It had my mind wrapped in synthetic guilt, engineered to dig deep and bury deeper, and then, a voice, mine, not the one I used now. Younger. Raw. Unfiltered by time. Jaren, wait, don't go in alone. It was the moment. The moment. The siege on Falm Core. Jaren leading the evac when command faltered. And me, frozen, unable to stop him. He saved 67 lives that night. And nearly died doing it. That memory had always stayed clean in my mind, heroic, uncompromised, until now. I watched myself hesitate in the doorway. Not just from fear, but doubt. Not of him. Of myself. I hadn't gone in after him because I was calculating. Cold. Weighed the odds. Let him risk it so I wouldn't have to. The sync showed it all, frame by frame. Senya's voice cut in, smooth and surgical. This is who you were, Rael. Beneath all the poetry. Beneath the grief. A man who survives by letting others bleed. I clenched my fists, but they didn't move. Not yet. She stepped closer, digital and untouchable. I'm not your enemy. I'm the one offering clarity. If you want out of this chamber, give me the name. What name? I rasped. She smiled. The one hiding inside you. The first Gateborn. The missing prototype. Her words twisted the air. My stomach turned, because a name did rise. From the dark part of me I'd sealed off after the war. A name buried beneath layers of misdirection. I'd met him once. He hadn't aged. Hadn't spoken, just looked at me, and vanished. Back then, I thought I'd imagined him. Now I wasn't so sure, but I didn't speak it aloud. Instead, I made a choice. I let the memory go, the real one. I cut the wire binding me to that heroic fiction. Let it dissolve, not for Senya, but for me. To escape the sink, you have to give up the one thing you never wanted to admit, and as soon as I did, the chamber cracked wide open. Pain hit first, real pain, then light. Gravity. Cold air. I fell hard, out of the harness, gasping. The room around me was metal, flickering, and half collapsed. Memory Chamber 7B, abandoned after the hybrid trials. Burn marks still lined the ceiling. Kaeli stood over me, eyes red. Hands shaking. Rael. I reached up. She helped me sit. You found me, I whispered. She nodded, then pulled something from her sleeve, a fragment. Black crystal. War-coded. I didn't just find you, she said, breath hitching. I found him. She placed it in my hand, the voice triggered on contact. Rael. It's Tren. They think I'm dead. They're wrong. Static. Then, I need you to come to Vault Epsilon. Bring the child. You're not ready for the full truth yet, but she is. I looked at Kaeli, and for a moment. I wasn't sure what scared me more, that Tren had survived, or that Kaeli might not need me to lead anymore. The wind inside the service tunnels had a voice, not mechanical. Not natural, something in between, like breath filtered through glass. Humming low and steady across old pipes and broken grid panels, Kaeli stopped walking. There, she whispered, tilting her head. I paused beside her, scanning the dark. What do you hear? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped forward slowly, eyes wide, tracking something invisible. Then she spoke, and her voice was distant. Pulled. It's not a sound. It's a presence. A pressure behind the silence. Like it's listening. I placed a hand on her shoulder. The vault? She nodded. We were still a half-day's walk out from Epsilon, but already it was reaching for her. I could feel it too, like static under the skin. Not fear. Not exactly. But the kind of anticipation you only feel standing at the edge of a cliff. Knowing you'll jump and not knowing what waits at the bottom. The path to Vault Epsilon wasn't on any map. It didn't exist in the official archives. Wasn't listed in old evacuation drills. It had been buried for decades, scrubbed, locked, redacted, but the crystal fragment Tren had embedded in the calm burst. His voice, his coordinates, pointed straight to it. A bypass node in Sector 3A, behind the coolant reservoir. Jaren had called it the dead channel. Said nothing worked down here. Too much residual radiation from the hybrid burns. But Kaeli said otherwise. It's not dead, she whispered as we passed a melted conduit. It's dreaming. We moved in silence after that. I watched our six. She watched the walls, her eyes flicked every few seconds, adjusting, tracking. She was sensing things I couldn't see. I remembered what Senya said, primary hybrid ID matched. That wasn't a title. It was a classification. Kaeli was the key, but not just to the vault, to everything, and if we didn't reach it first, someone else would. It happened just past the junction bend. We stepped into a decompression lock, and the door sealed behind us. Too fast. Something's wrong, Kaeli said, pulling me back. I drew my pulse flare, but the light revealed nothing. Just fog. Then, a low hiss, movement in the mist. I turned slowly, and saw them, 3 figures. No suits. No sound, just skin, pale and veined with circuitry, gleaming wet in the flicker of our flare. Silent trackers, Senya's ghosts. They didn't breathe. Didn't speak, they just moved, like oil in water. I shoved Kaeli behind me. Fired the flare. It passed straight through the first one, no damage. No delay. They weren't built to fight, they were built to erase. One leapt at us. Kaeli screamed, but the scream wasn't fear, it was force. Like before at the comm tower, the pressure wave exploded outward, cracking the chamber glass and sending the first 2 trackers hurtling back. The third lunged for me anyway. I fired the flare again. Useless. It grabbed my arm, and then Kaeli touched its temple, just a touch. It went still, lights behind its eyes dimmed, and it collapsed like an empty skin. We stood there, breathing hard. What the hell was that? I asked. She shook her head, voice low. I don't think I killed it. I think I woke it up. Just long enough to let it stop. Her hands trembled, not from fear, from something else, recognition. When we finally reached the vault gate, she stopped walking. The tunnel widened into a massive door, sealed in biocode and alloy. Symbols burned across its surface, old war glyphs, half fused from the firebomb purge. Kaeli approached it slowly, and the door began to open. No passcode. No signal burst, just her. Inside, there was no light, just a whisper, a child's voice. Hello, Kaeli. I've been waiting. She stood in the center of the chamber, small. Still. Barefoot, no more than 10 years old by appearance, but her eyes, bright silver and bottomless, told a different story. She didn't flinch when the vault door sealed shut behind us. She didn't blink, just turned her head slowly. And smiled. You made it, she said. Kaeli froze beside me. Who are you? I asked, stepping in front. The girl tilted her head. You know. No. I don't. I'm what they left behind, she said. What they couldn't kill. What they buried instead. She looked at Kaeli. I'm your beginning. The vault interior was like a tomb, cables hung like vines from the ceiling, pulsing softly with residual current. The walls were lined with suspended sleep tanks, most of them shattered. Inside a few, I could still see shapes. Small. Human once, now just husks in fluid. Kaeli walked past one, her hand trailing across the glass. These were children. The girl nodded. We all were. They called us bridges. Meant to link organic minds with the netweave. Most didn't make it. Why are you still here? I asked. I adapted. She said simply. They couldn't disconnect me. My neural matrix merged too deep. Are you fully human? She hesitated. No. And neither is she. Kaeli flinched. We sat in silence for a moment, then Kaeli stepped closer. You called me. The girl smiled faintly. I didn't have to. You were already coming. Your genome was calibrated to respond to my echo. That's why you've been changing. What do you mean? Your instincts. Your memory fractures. Your reactions to the grid. All of it is part of your emergence. Kaeli looked at me. So I was one of them? No, the girl said gently. You were built from me. That hit like a hammer. Kaeli stepped back, her breath catching. The girl continued, softly now. I was the prototype. The first stable bridge. But I was never meant to leave this place. They used my pattern to grow others. Most failed. One didn't. Kaeli sank to the floor. I knelt beside her. She whispered, they used her. To make me. And the girl nodded. What happens now? I asked, keeping my voice low. That depends, the girl said. I'm still tied to the system. I see what Senya sees. I know what's coming. She's preparing the overwrite. Kaeli blinked. The overwrite? They'll inject a root code across the netweave, the girl explained. A neurosignal disguised as a system update. It won't kill, but it'll mute. Mute what? Choice. Fear. Doubt. Emotion. Everything that makes us human. I stood up, pacing. Why would she do that? To stabilize the grid, the girl said. To preserve control. Too many hybrids are waking up. Too many old truths are bleeding through the filters. And what about us? I asked. What's she planning for us? The girl walked to a terminal, its screen flickered to life at her touch. She's triangulating your movement. Jaren stalled the trace, but that won't last. The hunter drones are already en route. Then we run, I said. No, the girl said. You stay. She looked at Kaeli. You're the only one who can reach the source node. It's buried beneath this vault. I can guide you, but only her signal will open it. Kaeli stood slowly, her hands were shaking, but her eyes were steady. Show me. I turned to the girl one last time. What's your name? She hesitated. They called me Echo. But I don't want her to carry that. Then what do you want? I asked. She looked at Kaeli, really looked. I want her to be free. The descent was silent, no wind. No lights. Just the sound of our footsteps echoing down an old spiral carved into obsidian black stone. No handrails. No exits. Only downward. Kaeli walked ahead of me, her back straight, shoulders tight. The girl, Echo, had said this place was built before the grid itself. A chamber for control, not storage. It had a name in the original system logs, Node 0, she warned us. Once you open it, you can't walk away unchanged. I believed her. The stairwell finally ended at a door unlike any I'd ever seen. No seams. No keypad. Just a smooth wall of mirrored metal. Kaeli raised her hand. A ripple moved across the surface. Recognition. It parted. We stepped through. The chamber was vast, cavernous, like the inside of a collapsed star. Wires hung from the ceiling like roots. The walls were carved with lines of ancient code, pulsing softly. Like veins beneath skin. At the center stood a massive obelisk, black and humming. Kaeli staggered. her pulse spiked. I could see it in her face, something was calling to her, "You okay?" I asked, steadying her. She nodded, but her voice was hollow. "It's like I've been here before." "You haven't." "I know. But something in me has." She approached the obelisk and laid her palm against it. A sound like thunder rolled through the floor, light traced upward through the stone. Symbols awakened, millions of them, scrolling faster than the eye could follow, then everything stopped, the room dimmed. And a voice filled the air, not mechanical, not human, something in between. "Hybrid signature recognized, neural link established, initiate memory spool." Kaeli didn't answer, but the system took her silence as consent. She dropped to her knees, her eyes rolled back. Her whole body seized. "Kaeli." I grabbed her, but her skin was hot, like a circuit overloading. The obelisk pulsed again, this time sending threads of light directly into her forehead. I heard her scream, but her mouth didn't move. It wasn't just pain, it was everything. Grief, wonder, confusion, centuries of emotion slamming into her at once. I looked up at the node. "Stop it. She's not ready." No response. The symbols on the walls had changed, they now showed images. Memories, hybrid children being tested. Some smiling. Most screaming, a room of doctors. A woman who looked like Senya, but younger, arguing with a man in a white coat, words scrolled past, primary objective, emotional control protocol, secondary objective, God class interface seed. I felt sick. This wasn't about connection, this was about dominion. Kaeli gasped, then collapsed. I caught her before she hit the floor. She was sweating, shivering. "It's all in there," she whispered. "All of it. The other children. What they did to them. What they planned for me." She looked at me. Dazed. "They used love like a scalpel. Taught us to bond, then cut it away." I held her face in my hands. "You're not them. You're not that. You choose who you are." "No," she said quietly. "I was made to become." Behind us, the obelisk began shifting. It folded open like petals, revealing a throne of cables and crystal. The system voice returned. "Initiate overwrite countermeasure. Subject, hybrid core. Warning, cognitive failure possible." Kaeli stood, barely. "This is the only way," she said. "I can flood the netweave with original memory. Real emotion. Raw humanity. If I do it now, before the overwrite, we still have a chance. What happens to you if you do that?" She looked at me, her voice didn't tremble. "Does it matter?" I grabbed her hand. "It matters to me." She leaned in. "Then trust me. Hold the exit. Keep the path clear. I'll come back if I can." I didn't want to let go, but I did. She stepped into the throne. The system wrapped around her, and the light swallowed everything. Meanwhile, above, Jaren stood in the western corridor, breathing hard. Senya was already waiting, flanked by 2 hunter-class drones, sleek, silver, twitching like predators on a leash. She smiled without warmth. "You bought them time," she said. That was noble. But misguided. Jaren stepped forward. Rael felt it like a pulse in his teeth. He staggered. The walls trembled. Something in the weave was changing. He wasn't alone. A shape moved in the dark, sleek. Fast, not a drone, a man in armor, hybrid enhanced, eyes glowing faintly blue. Rael barely raised his shock rod in time before the man tackled him. They hit the wall hard. Sparks burst from a cracked panel. "Who sent you?" Rael spat. The soldier didn't answer, just activated a neural blade and drove it toward Rael's neck. The blade stopped mid-strike, blocked, by Jaren, breathing hard. Eyes furious, he shoved the attacker back and slammed his elbow into the soldier's throat. The hybrid fell. Rael scrambled to his feet. What happened?" "You were with Senya." Jaren held up the device she gave him. "I made a choice." He crushed it under his boot, then turned toward the passage. "She's sending more. We have maybe 5 minutes." Back inside the throne, Kaeli's body convulsed, but her mind held. She didn't run from the wave, she stepped into it, and changed it, not with logic, with memory. A moment, Rael teaching her how to set a beacon in the drylands, both of them laughing as the signal glitched and played old music from Earth. Another, the first time she realized she was different, not when the powers came, but when she looked in a mirror and felt both human and not. Final. Rael's voice, shaking, after the calm tower collapse. Whatever happens, you're not a weapon. You're my daughter. The system hesitated, then the lights bent inward, code unraveled, and Kaeli spoke a single command, rewrite with truth. The wave shattered, the chamber pulsed, the entire net weave, sector by sector, began reacting, memories hidden. Files erased. Neural patterns faked or buried, all started surfacing, truth spilling across the grid like a rising tide. Outside, alarm screamed. Inside, Kaeli opened her eyes, and said 2 words, "It's done." Rael helped her down from the throne. I'd seen traces of it during the war, never deployed, always redacted, a cognitive weapon, not for hybrids, for humans. Jaren heard it too. We were still patched into the same calm thread. He was panting. Running, Rael, they're pushing the override. It's not just auditory, it's neural. If you start forgetting where you are, who you are, shut your ears and cut the line. Where's Kaeli? She's resisting. Barely. But she's hearing it too. What about you? A pause. I think it knows me. Then static. I pushed through 2 more rail chambers, ducking echo patrols, and reached the uplink spire. Dust choked the air. Half the consoles were melted. But the core was still active. I dropped the shard in, waited. The system fought me, lines of code screaming across the interface like wild teeth, but the memory logs were real. Uncorrupted. And that made them dangerous, because they showed everything, what Senya did to the early hybrids, what they made Kaeli for, what I agreed to. Before I lost my memory, transmission locked, signal burst initiated, I stepped back, and a shape moved behind me, not a drone, Senya herself, hair tied back. Blood on her sleeve. Calm as ever. You always had the gift of showing up at the worst possible moment, she said. I didn't reach for the shock rod, it wouldn't have mattered. What is the siren doing? I asked. Exactly what it was made for, she said. Wiping away the parts of you that don't serve order. The panic. The resistance. The pain. And Kaeli? She's resisting. But not for long. Senya stepped closer. You have a choice, Rael. Come with me. Let us reset what was broken. You'll remember things you've forgotten. You'll understand why this matters. And if I say no? She didn't answer, she just tapped her wrist pad, and walked away. I didn't move, I couldn't. The siren's hum was leaking into my thoughts. Whispering half memories, my mother's voice, a song from the Exodus, Kaeli's laughter, Jaren's first scar. All scrambled, I dropped to one knee, eyes burning. A voice said my name, not Senya's, Kaeli's, but not from here, from inside the shard. Rael. You're stronger than this. It's just a cage made of echoes. Break it. I clenched my fists, focused, and screamed. The siren burst snapped. For a moment, the air cleared, and in that breath of silence, I ran. Kaeli wasn't moving, her eyes were open, but she wasn't there. Jaren was shaking her, blood on his knuckles, voice cracking. Kaeli, come on. Wake up, don't let them take you, Kaeli. She blinked, then again, slow, like waking up underwater. I saw. She whispered, what? I saw. The girl I was supposed to be. Jaren froze, she sat up. Her body trembled like something inside her was still shifting, like the siren protocol had tried to rewrite her and failed halfway through. They built a version of me that never fought back, Kaeli said. She smiled. She obeyed. She called Senya mother. Jaren looked away. They were hiding in a collapsed junction beneath Vault 7. The siren signal was weaker here, tangled in old firewalls and signal blockers. Kaeli touched her forehead. It wasn't a dream. It was a failsafe. If I didn't resist, that version would have taken over. Jaren nodded slowly. I know. Kaeli turned toward him, sharp. You knew. I didn't know it'd trigger like this. But yes, I saw the old blueprint. Before she wiped my access. She who? Senya. Kaeli stood. You've been holding things back from us. I had to, Jaren said, his voice flat. Because if I told Rael the truth, he'd never look at you the same way again. Meanwhile, I was crawling through old access shafts, soaked in dust and static. The siren was fading from my mind. Not gone. Just pushed back, like a fever after a storm. I could still feel it in my ears, soft, circular. Whispering names I hadn't spoken in decades. That's when I saw her, curled up in the corner of a decommissioned medbay, gray cloak. Oxygen tank. One cybernetic hand. I thought it was a ghost, but she looked up, and my knees gave out. Talon, I whispered. She smiled weakly. Hey, Rael. You look like you crawled out of a fire. Talon had been gone for 13 years, declared dead after the bombings at Haverreach. She was my tech lead, my closest friend in the old rebellion. And, for a while, something more. I dropped beside her. How are you alive? She coughed, kept off the grid. Didn't mean to stay gone this long. But when the siren went live, I felt it. Woke something in the implants. You were part of it. I helped build it. She held up her cybernetic hand. This was the price. They didn't want empathy. They wanted obedience. I pushed back. They cut me out and marked me as lost. She leaned forward, breath shallow. You have to listen to me, Rael. The protocol isn't just code. It's a seed. It can regrow anywhere. If Kaeli dies, it'll choose a new host. I felt the air drop from my lungs. What? She's the firewall now. The only one with the right neurological resonance to contain it. If she breaks, the siren spreads. Back in the vault, Kaeli looked at Jaren with fire in her eyes. I want the rest, she said. Everything. No more secrets. Jaren hesitated, then opened his wrist pad, a locked archive. Voice print encoded. He let her read it. Kaeli's mouth went dry. This is the first contract. Jaren said quietly. Signed by Rael. Before he ever met you. She looked up, devastated. So he knew. No, Jaren said. That's the catch. They wiped his memory after he signed. That was part of the clause. They made him believe you were born free. Kaeli's voice broke. I wasn't. No, Jaren said. You were engineered. But what you've become, that's yours. Somewhere above, the siren began to shift tones again, new voices now. Children, don't run, they said. Running hurts. We sat in the old filtration chamber long after the siren stopped. Everything smelled like rust and memory. The walls were pocked with old filters, now useless, covered in a fine black dust that hadn't moved in years. The air hummed faintly, an underground current of power still flowing from somewhere deep inside the grid. A hum like a heart that didn't know it was already dead. Kaeli was curled against the pipework, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes far off. Jaren stood beside the door, unmoving, and I didn't know how to begin. She's not just a girl, Rael, Jaren said finally, his voice flat. She's the prototype. I didn't answer. I was watching Kaeli's face. She's not a weapon, I said quietly. I didn't say she was. I said what they made her to be. Kaeli looked up then. Her voice was small, but it didn't tremble. Tell me everything. Jaren took a breath. A long one. The kind you take before the fall. You weren't born, he said. You were sequenced. Built from a fusion chain of human and resonance layer data. The early trials failed. They couldn't stabilize cognition past the 3rd month. Kaeli's jaw tightened. What am I? He looked straight at her. You're the first who survived. You weren't supposed to. You were a buried file in the Aaron labs, hidden by someone who didn't believe in what Senya was planning. The child wasn't supposed to make it out. My heart slammed against my ribs. You knew this? He nodded, eyes on me now. Not at first. But when the lockdown started, Senya offered me access to the sealed records. She said I'd earn trust. That's when I saw it, her file. Her designation. Kaeli, 1. Echo layer hybrid construct. Memory seeded. Kaeli didn't move. Didn't cry. Didn't even blink. She has memories that aren't hers, Jaren added. Imprinted ones. Some from actual people. Some, from simulations. She's a person, I growled. I know that, Jaren snapped. But that's not how they see her. Senya's team sees her as a proof of concept. A bridge between control and chaos. Kaeli finally spoke. Her voice didn't shake. And what do you see when you look at me, Jaren? He lowered his gaze. I see someone my brother would burn the world for. I stepped between them, not because I had to, but because something in the air had changed. The message we received, I said, the voice claiming to be me. It said not to trust the offer. That they'd try to turn her. Kaeli slowly stood. They already have. A silence settled between us, heavy and metallic. Jaren looked toward the corridor. They'll come for her now, he said. They can't allow this truth to exist. What about the survivor? I asked, the one from the lower sector. Jaren nodded. Still unconscious. But she's old tech, stitched together from earlier versions. Kaeli might be the key to waking her. Kaeli took a slow step forward. Let's go see her. Now. I asked. Kaeli's eyes glinted in the dim, broken light. If what you're telling me is true, then I want to know who else they tried to make me into. The survivor was kept in an isolation cell beneath the decommissioned medbay. No lights. No sound. Just an old biometric seal and a tag burned into the frame. Subject, Elaine, 0. Recall class. Do not reinitialize. We stood in front of the door for a long time. Jaren adjusted the voltage regulators on the side panel. They didn't just abandon her. They erased her from the logs. This door doesn't even register on the main systems anymore. Kaeli stepped forward. Don't touch the panel, she said quietly. She's listening. Jaren looked at me. I nodded. Let her. Kaeli placed her hand against the steel, and something in the room shivered. A low pulse swept through the floor, like static traveling backward through time. The door clicked. Then hissed open. Inside, the survivor lay curled beneath a thermal sheet, eyes half open but empty. Tubes fed into her arms, but the machines had long since powered down. She wasn't hooked up to anything real, just drifting between signals. Kaeli knelt beside her. She's barely alive, Jaren whispered. No, Kaeli murmured. She's between. She pressed 2 fingers to the woman's temple, and a faint crackle rippled through the air. Like electricity catching in your teeth. Then Kaeli went still, her body straightened. Her pupils flared black. Kaeli. I said, stepping forward. She's here, Kaeli said, but it wasn't her voice anymore, it was layered. Doubled. She's not just a survivor. She's the template. The original map. The first mind they tried to graft into hybrid flesh. They called it echoing. Elaine's eyes blinked, suddenly lucid. You're one of the later ones, she said, mouth dry, voice metallic. But you still carry the song. I can hear it in you. Kaeli nodded slowly, speaking with a softness I hadn't heard before. What did they do to you? Elaine smiled. It broke my heart. They let me remember what I was, and then rewrote me into something they could use. Over and over, until I forgot who I hated more, them or myself. Jaren crouched, stunned. How is she even alive? Because I sang the system back to sleep, Elaine said. I became its lullaby. That's the only way it let me live. Kaeli closed her eyes, and then she screamed, not aloud, but in resonance. The walls trembled. The floor cracked beneath her feet. I rushed forward to grab her, but a pulse threw me back against the wall. Sparks flickered in the ceiling. Kaeli collapsed to her knees, gasping. Elaine reached for her with trembling fingers. You saw it, didn't you? Kaeli nodded. Her voice was hollow. They've already made another. Jaren froze. What? They took my core signal, Kaeli whispered. And built something new. Something worse. It's not just a hybrid anymore, it's a mirror. A version of me that obeys. Elaine slumped back, exhausted. They're calling it Project Halo. They believe it'll end the war before it begins. But it's not meant for peace. It's a weapon. One designed to mimic everything I am, without the flaw of choice. We stood in silence. The only sound was the flickering light above us. Finally, Kaeli turned to me. I need to find her, she said. Before they activate her. I reached for her hand. We'll stop them. Together. But something in her eyes had shifted. She didn't look like the girl who once asked me if the sky was real, she looked like the storm we were all running from. We slipped out of the grid before dawn, the border wall near Sector 12 had gone dark, just long enough for us to climb the old scaffolds and cross into what used to be farmland. Before the annex. Before the burn, now, it was a graveyard, not of bodies, of signals. Nothing moved across the quiet field. Not a single broadcast. Not even a whisper on the pulse bands. Just static haze rolling low across the earth like fog with nowhere left to go. Kaeli led. She didn't speak much anymore. Something in her gait had changed, sharper, faster. She moved like she was already a step ahead of everything. But the silence scared me. Not because she was cold. Because she was listening, to something we couldn't hear. Jaren had stayed behind to watch the sector. He said he'd keep Senya off our trail. I didn't like it. He was acting too calm, too resigned. But Kaeli told me to let him go. He's made his choice, she'd said. We found the ruins by nightfall. A collapsed comm vault, hidden under dirt and tangled wire, just outside the edge of the floodlights. Kaeli knelt near a broken relay spire and placed both palms against the metal. The ground answered, a thrum beneath the soil. A rhythm in the air. I felt it in my teeth. She was here, Kaeli whispered. Not long ago. You mean the clone? I asked carefully. Kaeli didn't correct me, her signals fractured. They're trying to calibrate her. But she's pulling away. Her instincts are too strong. I crouched beside her. Is that good or bad?